The stars above Villari Prime looked calm, peaceful, but on the surface of the planet, panic ruled. Fires burned across the forests, ash rained down on once bright gardens, sky lanes were silent. Cities were falling one by one. The Villari were not fighters. Their bodies were thin and light, built for farming, science, and song. Their technology was advanced, but not for war. They had no warships, no armored soldiers, no heavy weapons. They believed in peace, and for many years, peace had kept them. Safed out until the Growlocks came. The Growlocks were nightmares, huge. Thick-skinned beasts with claws like blades and eyes that glowed red in the dark. They moved in packs, crawling over walls, digging through shields, and swarming everything in their path. They did not speak. They did not take prisoners. They hunted, they fed, and they grew. The Villari's cries for help echoed across the galaxy. Messages were sent to the Council worlds, the trade alliances, even to pirate bands. Some replied with kind words, some sent scouts, but none dared face the Growlocks, not truly, not fully. On the last night before the capital fell, Ambassador Telly stood in the control chamber of the Villari Unity Tower. Her long fingers trembled above the comms panel. Behind her, younglings wept. Round her, soldiers with weak plasma rifles stood guard, faces pale with fear. She whispered, "There's no one left, no one coming. We will be forgotten." A technician near the console shook his head. "There's one more signal we could send, Ambassador. One last address." Telly blinked. "Who?" The technician's voice was unsure. "The Sol System. Humans. We never contacted them after first contact. They stayed away from galactic politics." Telly remembered the files. The humans were strange. They learned fast. They spoke little. Their world was called Earth, and it was filled with predators, animals that hunted other animals for food. Most species in the galaxy had evolved away from such things. Not humans. "They will not come," she said softly. "Still," the technician said, "we should try." Telly nodded. The final message was short, a simple signal burst carrying images of burning cities, screams of dying civilians, and one final line in galactic standard: "To any who still listen, please help us. We do not wish to vanish." 3 days passed, then something strange happened. A single ship appeared at the edge of Villari space. It did not match any known design. It was large, but not smooth like council ships. Its black armor was shaped in layers like the hide of a beast. Its name was written in harsh letters, FEN or IR. Ambassador Telly was called to the landing site. As the ship touched down, dust blew across the landing pad. The engines gave a deep growl. The door opened slowly, revealing tall figures in dark armor. They wore helmets shaped like the heads of animals: wolves, hawks, lions. One stepped forward and removed his helmet. His face was weathered, marked with old scars. His eyes were steady and cold. "I'm Major Reed," he said. "We received your signal." Telly took a step forward, her voice weak. "You're from Earth?" "Yes," Reed answered. "We're with Project Warden. We didn't think anyone would come." Reed looked at the smoke in the distance. "Most wouldn't." Telly gathered herself. "You must leave. There are thousands of Growlocks. We barely survived the last wave. You can't win." Reed's soldiers stood behind him, silent. One of them placed a hand on a long metal crate and opened it. Inside were sleek weapons and glowing blades. "We're not here to survive," Reed said. "We're here to hunt." The next few hours were a blur for the Villari. The human ship opened its lower decks, releasing drones and mobile command centers. Scout teams spread across the forest, moving faster than Villari flyers. Some rode hoverbikes with silent engines. Others vanished into the trees. Wearing cloaks that bent light, they set traps in the hills. They built towers with auto turrets. They mapped the tunnels the Growlocks used underground. Telly watched all this with wide eyes. She had seen armies before, but this was not an army. It was something else. These humans moved like packs. Each team had a leader, but they acted together, almost without words, like wolves in the snow, like raptors in the sky. "They're not fighting to defend," one of her advisors whispered. "They're not protecting territory. No." Telly said, They're hunting. That night, the Growlocks came again. Telly stood in the observation dome of the Unity Tower. Far below, the jungle lit up with flashes of fire and motion. The Growlocks charged, expecting weak prey as before. But this time, they found something waiting. Drones dropped smoke that blinded their senses. Turrets tore through their front lines. Human soldiers moved in behind them. Cutting them off, explosives shattered their underground tunnels. Plasma blades carved through their thick hides. Reed moved at the front of his unit, not behind. His rifle fired in controlled bursts, each shot aimed with perfect calm. One of the Growlocks leapt from the trees. Reed ducked, turned, and fired 3 shots into its chest before it hit the ground. Hours passed. When the sun rose, the field was quiet. Hundreds of Growlocks lay dead. Not one human had fallen. Later, Telly met Reed again on the smoking battlefield. He was wiping his blade clean. The sky behind him was orange from the burning hive. "You're not afraid of them," she said. "No." "Why?" Reed looked at her. "Because on Earth, we're not the prey. We're the top of the food chain." She looked around at the soldiers, gathering their gear. Their eyes were calm, their movements sharp. No fear, no hesitation. Telly whispered, "Are all humans like this?" Reed answered, "No. Just the ones you call when the galaxy needs predators." The Fenrir floated above, Villari Prime like a shadow from legend. Its black armor glowed softly in the morning light, and smaller human crafts flew round it like silent birds of prey. The Villari, watching from their towers and hill domes, had never seen a warship like this. It did not shine. It did not sparkle. It looked like something built for one thing only: battle. Inside the ship, Major Reed stood in the command bay with his team. Screens showed movement across the force. The Growlocks were spreading again. They were shifting their nests toward the mountains and building a new central hive. If they succeeded, they would control half the planet in weeks. Reed turned to the ship's AI unit. A calm voice spoke from the wall, tracking Growlocks' movement patterns. "Estimated hive growth is 2% per hour." Reed nodded. "Prepare strike teams. Start with Wolf, Falcon, and Panther squads. Drop zones will be marked near the ridges." A soldier nearby checked the digital map. "We'll be landing just a few clicks from their tunnel network. That gives us a clean path in." Reed looked at the unit. "We'll cut off the new hive before it forms. Quick in, quick out. Full silence. Use darts and blades where possible. Keep the noise down. We don't spook them. We surround them." The soldiers nodded. No one asked questions. These weren't ordinary troops. They had trained for years under Earth's hardest conditions: deserts, jungles, Arctic zones. Each had the mark of a predator etched into their armor. Not for glory, not for looks. It was a reminder. They were not defenders. They were hunters. As the drop ships left the Fenrir, the Villari gathered below to watch. Telly stood at the Unity Tower with a group of scientists and students. None of them had ever seen such silent machines. The ships didn't roar. They glided. She watched as teams landed in 3 locations. Each soldier moved in smooth formation, checking weapons, scanning the area, and blending into the landscape. "They act like animals," one Villari elder whispered. "No." Telly replied. "They act like nature. Efficient, focused." Another voice came from behind. It was an older Villari scientist named Lem. "We have studied thousands of species, but humans remain a mystery. So advanced, so dangerous. Yet they live on a planet still ruled by wild beasts." Telly nodded. "And they learn from those beasts." Team Falcon moved through the forest like birds through wind. Their armor was light. Their steps left no prints. They spotted a small Growlock scout party ahead, moving toward a destroyed Villari shelter. The team leader, Mira, raised a hand. Her team stopped. She tapped a signal on her wrist pad. A small drone flew ahead, silent as mist. The feed came through. Quickly, for Growlocks, no heavy armor, no signs of telepathic link to a queen. Isolate and engage. Mira said, "No energy weapons. Keep it quiet." The team spread out. Seconds later, the Growlock scouts were down. Not one had time to scream. Team Wolf, led by Reed himself, moved underground. Old mining tunnels under the hills had been taken by the Growlocks. The air was hot and damp. Reed's helmet showed heat signatures ahead. The Growlocks were digging, trying to expand the hive. He raised a hand and pointed. The others moved with perfect coordination. They reached a side tunnel and set charges. The roof collapsed silently, bearing the tunnel. Reed then drew his plasma blade. It glowed softly. He advanced with his team, striking targets one by one. When they reached the lower chamber, the nest there was destroyed, eggs burned. The hive was cut off. Above ground, Growlocks screamed, but they were too late. The predators had already vanished. In the command bay of the Fenrir, data flowed quickly. The AI spoke. 17 enemy units eliminated. Tunnels sealed. Hive growth halted. Reed wiped sweat from his forehead. His armor was marked with dust and acid burns. But his expression stayed calm. Telly's voice came through the comms. "We saw the smoke." "What happened?" Reed replied. "The hive in the northern ridge is gone. We'll move on the next site tomorrow. Don't send your people in yet. Let us clear the path." Telly was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I understand. Thank you." That night, the Velarii sent meals to the human camp. They brought soft fruits, mineral-rich waters, and warm bread. The human soldiers accepted it with nods. They didn't speak much, but some of them smiled. One even gave a young Velarii a small coin with a wolf on it. Telly sat across from Reed at a temporary table outside the Fenrir. "You're not what we expected," she said. Reed sipped from a metal cup. "Most people say that. We always thought humanity was dangerous, unpredictable." "We are," Reed answered, "but we choose what we use that for." She looked into the trees. "And right now, you choose to fight for us." Reed nodded. "Not just for you. If the Growlocks spread, they'll reach other worlds, maybe even Earth. You protect the galaxy. Then, no," Reed said. "We protect the balance. Every system has its predators and its prey. When the balance breaks, something must restore it." Telly thought about his words long after he returned to his team. In the days that followed, more teams joined the fight. Panther Squad moved through the jungle floor, planting scent bombs and heat traps to draw the Growlocks into dead zones. Cerberus Unit, a heavy strike team, cleared large hive tunnels with fire and sonic blasts. Falcon Squad returned to the skies, marking enemy movement. The Velarii began to understand. These were not just soldiers. They were organized by hunting style, built to adapt, built to strike without warning. Children in Velarii cities began drawing pictures of wolves and hawks beside human warriors. Songs were written about the night the predators arrived to protect them, and still, the humans pressed forward. One evening, Telly stood in her chamber, watching the sky. More Growlock ships had entered orbit. A full queen was arriving. That meant war was coming in full force. She closed her eyes, afraid. Then, from the clouds above, she saw something flash. The Fenrir was rising. It turned its weapons toward the enemy ships. The humans were not waiting anymore. They were taking the fight beyond the forest, beyond the tunnels, and into the sky. Telly whispered. They didn't come to help. They came to hunt. The forest at night was no longer silent. The trees, once home to gentle Velarii birds and glowing insects, now had the crawling shapes of the Growlocks. They moved fast, low to the ground, claws digging into soil. Their breath was heavy, their eyes red in the dark. They searched for prey, for anything that dared stand against them. But this time, the forest held more than Growlocks. It held shadows that moved with purpose. It held hunters. Major Reed crouched behind a tree, his hand resting on the soft earth. Around him, Team Wolf stayed low and quiet. Each soldier wore a dark cloak that blended with the leaves. They didn't speak. They didn't move unless Reed moved. In the distance, Growlock's drones clicked their claws and sniffed the air. One growled, sensing something. Reed slowly lifted a small device from his belt. He pressed it. A short pulse went out. The drones stopped, confused. Their senses were being jammed. Reed looked to his left. One of his soldiers, Yana, nodded and slipped into the brush. The trap had begun. In another part of the forest, Falcon Squad climbed into the canopy. They moved like birds on silent wings, hopping from branch to branch. Mira, their leader, pointed toward a clearing below. 10 Growlocks stood guard around a newly laid egg pit. It was a sign the queen was building again. If those eggs hatched, the forest would fall in days. Mira sent a signal to a small flying drone. The drone zipped forward and dropped a scent capsule behind the Growlocks. Suddenly, the beasts turned, their attention pulled away. That was all Mira needed. Falcon Squad dropped from the trees. Before the Growlocks could react, the squad was among them. Blades sliced, darts fired, and the fight ended in seconds. Mira stepped back, her boots soaked in dust. Clear, she whispered into her comm. Panther Squad worked closer to the hive tunnel. Their task was more dangerous. They had to lay charges without being seen. The entrance was guarded by 2 large Growlocks beasts, armored and alert. But Panther Squad didn't charge in. They crawled beneath the roots, moved through ditches, and climbed over fallen trees. Their leader, Dax, placed the explosives gently along the edge of the hive gate. Then he whispered, "Fall back." The squad vanished again, as if they were never there. Moments later, the ground shook. The tunnel collapsed with a deep rumble. Inside the hive, Growlocks screamed in rage. But no enemy was in sight. The Velari watched all of this from their orbiting station. Telly stood before the observation screen with a team of scholars and military officers. Dozens of drones showed the humans moving like ghosts, striking and disappearing. The forest burned in patterns, not chaos. The attacks were timed, precise. Telly turned to Lem, the elder scientist. They studied their enemy. They tracked them, cut off their paths, and attacked from the edges. Lem nodded. Like the great sky serpents once did in our ancient past. But humans are more advanced. They use tools, machines, teams. Another officer stepped forward. This is not war as we know it. This is a hunt. Back in the forest, Reed regrouped with his team. Report, he said. Yana answered, nest destroyed. No losses. Reed nodded. Good. Next, we push east. That's where the queen is building her second tunnel. Another soldier, Bren, checked the map. We're close, less than a kilometer. Reed stood and looked at the trees ahead. The sun was rising, casting long shadows through the leaves. But he wasn't looking at the light. He was watching the darkness. That morning, the Growlocks sent a larger patrol into the forest. 20 beasts marched in a tight formation, sniffing, hissing, ready to tear apart anything they found. They didn't know the humans had already set traps, tripwires connected to spike launchers, sent markers that led them into choke points. Camouflage pits with sonic mines. As the Growlocks moved, the forest turned against them. One fell into a pit and exploded in flame. Another was hit by a spike from above. The rest panicked. Breaking formation. That was when Team Cerberus arrived. They didn't use stealth. They used strength. Heavy armor, flame cannons, loud footsteps. The Growlocks turned to fight, but Cerberus hit them hard and fast. Explosions lit the trees. Fire roared. Smoke rose like a storm cloud. When it cleared, nothing was left but ashes. Reed watched the fire from a distance. He spoke into his comm. Cerberus, pull back. We need to cool the ground before moving deeper. A voice answered, understood. Suddenly, a second voice came through. It was Telly, calling from orbit. Major Reed, we've picked up new signals. A Growlocks carrier has entered the system. It's headed toward your location. Reed didn't flinch. ETA, for hours. Understood. We'll be ready. He turned to his team. They're bringing reinforcements. That means the queen is nearby. We find her now. Deep in the eastern woods, Growlocks workers were building another pit. This one was larger. The queen would arrive here soon. But before they could finish, they heard a strange sound, a soft clicking. Then silence. Suddenly, 3 darts flew through the air, hitting the guards. They collapsed without a sound. Reed stepped out of the trees, followed by his team. He pointed toward the pit, marked the landing zone. We'll need air support. Within minutes, drones arrived overhead. They dropped gas bombs into the pit, flooding it with choking smoke. Then came the turrets. Tiny machines landed and unfolded, firing pulse rounds into the nest. The Growlocks tried to run, but it was too late. The nest was gone. Hours later, Telly met with the Villari Council. She played the drone recordings for them. They watched in silence as human teams destroyed each enemy nest with perfect timing. When the video ended, one counselor spoke. "We cannot repay them," another said. "Perhaps we don't need to. Perhaps they didn't come for reward." Telly stood tall. "They came because someone had to stop the Growlocks. They came because they know how predators think." The counselor asked, "What are they really, Telly? Soldiers? Machines?" She smiled softly. "They are shadows in the forest, and they fight not with fear, but with purpose." That night, on the edge of the forest, Reed looked at the stars. The Growlocks carrier would arrive soon. A full queen was likely aboard. His soldiers stood nearby, checking weapons, recharging armor, and resting under trees. Yenna walked up to him. "They'll hit us hard tomorrow." Reed nodded. "Let them try. This forest belongs to the hunters." Now, and in the darkness, the humans waited, not as prey, but as predators. The sky above Villari Prime turned red as the Growlocks carrier entered the atmosphere. It moved like a living mountain, covered in dark plates and lined with rows of breathing vents. Organic cables hung beneath it like roots. The beast ship didn't use engines like human vessels. It floated with strange energy, its presence heavy, as if the planet itself groaned under its weight from the orbiting station. Telly watched in silence. The carrier had landed in the eastern jungle, not far from the place where the last hive was destroyed. Thousands of Growlocks poured out of its side ports, workers, warriors. In one larger shape, surrounded by glowing guards, the queen had arrived. Telly sent the signal to the Fenrir. Inside the warship, Major Reed stood before a large holomap. It showed the new hive site forming deep underground. Unlike the others, this one was protected by biowalls and heavy tunnels. The queen was nesting fast, and her link was already spreading to the rest of the Growlocks on the planet. If she rooted, the war would tip. Reed spoke to his team. "We've got one shot. Once she settles, the hive will go full structure. No small raids, no ambushes. They'll swarm every city and every field." A soldier named Bren stepped forward. "What's the plan?" Reed zoomed the map. 3 Teams. Alpha goes loud. You draw their attention near the upper nests. Bravo plants charges on the lower hive roots. Shadow enters from the east wall. Small vent here. That's queen access. Only way without waking the entire nest. Yenna raised a brow. "Who's leading Shadow?" Reed answered, "I am." The room went quiet. Hours later, Team Alpha dropped from the Fenrir in a blaze of light. Their armor was bright for once, glowing white and gold. A challenge, a signal. They ran straight at the Growlocks' lines, weapons blazing, tossing flash bombs and sonic shakers. The Growlocks responded fast. Hundreds turned to face them, the air filled with screams and fire. But that was the point. While the enemy focused on Alpha, Bravo moved silently through tunnels on the western side. Dax and his team placed small charges along the hive routes, not to destroy, but to weaken. Once the queen was down, the whole nest would collapse, and on the far side of the jungle, Reed and his shadow team crawled through the tight vent under a hill. The passage was narrow, and wet. Green slime dripped from the walls. The air was thick, with the smell of decay. Reed moved first, followed by Yenna, Bren, and 2 other silent hunters. They didn't speak. Their helmets showed red outlines, a headguard beast pacing near the queen chamber. Reed raised a hand. His team stopped. He pressed a button on his belt. A small round drone rolled ahead. Invisible in heat and sound. It showed the chamber. The queen was there. She was massive, twice the size of anything Reed had seen. Her body glowed from within, a pulsing orange light under thick armor. Dozens of tubes connected her to the floor. Eggs surrounded her in neat rows. Warriors stood guard with sharp blades and armored skin. Reed whispered, "We move in slow. Aim for the joints under her shell. Don't use explosives. If we rupture the eggs, they'll swarm." Yenna tapped her blade. "Understood." Inside the queen's chamber, the air felt alive. The queen turned slightly, sensing movement. Her long face twitched. She hissed once, but it was too late. Reed and his team dropped in from above, landing between the egg lines. They moved like lightning. Silent strikes. Precision cuts. One Growlox warrior fell before it even raised its claws. Another charged but was caught in a wire trap. The queen screamed. She rose high, legs kicking. Mouth opening wide to release a sonic burst. Reed fired a stun shot directly into her eye. She flinched, stumbled. Now, he called. Yana rolled beneath her and stabbed deep into the connection tubes. Bren climbed her side, planting a freeze charge along her spine. Reed moved fast and low, slicing the final anchor cables. The queen twisted and slammed down. The chamber shook. She hissed again, but her strength was breaking. Without her anchors, her power link to the hive began to fade. Outside, Team Alpha saw the change first. The Growlox warriors suddenly paused. They staggered. Their eyes flickered. Lena, Alpha's leader, shouted, "Something's wrong with them. They're breaking formation." Back in the tunnels, Dax got the signal. Charges planted, pulling out. Inside the queen's chamber, Reed watched her body slump. She let out one last screech. It echoed across the hive, reaching every connected Growlox. Then, silence. Her body sagged. Lights on the ground faded. The queen was dead. The hive began to collapse. Bravo's charges blew in time bursts. Tearing through the weakened roots, the chamber cracked. Dust fell from above. The floor split open. Evac route. Reed ordered. His team ran, using grapples and jump pads to leap through the tunnels. Fire rose behind them as the hive fell. Outside, the jungle shook. Trees snapped. The earth opened and swallowed the queens. Nest from orbit. Telly watched the explosion spread. She turned to Lem. "It's done." Lem looked at her with wide eyes. "They killed the queen. They stopped the hive." Telly smiled. "They didn't just stop it, they hunted it to the end." At the edge of the forest, the surviving Growlox began to scatter. Without the queen's link, they lost coordination. They ran in wild directions, no longer a swarm. But beasts without guidance, human units moved quickly, rounding them up, trapping the loose ones and clearing the area. The Velari forces even joined in now, working with humans for the first time since the war began. Velari Prime saw peace return to its trees. Later, in a quiet clearing, Reed sat with his team. Their armor was scarred, their blades dull, their bodies tired, but their eyes were calm. Yenna handed him a drink. "That was the biggest queen yet." Reed took it and nodded. "She won't be the last," Bren asked. "What now?" Reed looked toward the sky. "We finished the cleanup. Then we wait." "For what?" Yenna asked. "For the next scream." In the orbiting station, Telly stood before the Galaxy Council through a live transmission. She shared recordings, data, and evidence. She showed them how the Growlox were stopped, and she ended with one message. When the galaxy turned away, humanity stepped forward, not with speeches, not with fear, but with action, with teeth and skill, and a warning. She paused. "They are not just soldiers. They are the apex, and when the predators come, they answer." The lights inside the human command ship's spearhead turned red. As the alert echoed through every hallway, General Mason stood tall on the central platform, his face hard and focused. Before him floated a hologram of the Dargan invasion fleet, now spreading across 3 star systems. The peaceful races had tried everything: negotiation, surrender, retreat, but the Dargans crushed every plea beneath their mechanical boots. Now, it was time for the humans to act, not with more warnings, not with peace talks. It was time for Protocol Apex. "Bring them in," Mason said. His voice echoed through the command deck. A few officers hesitated. One of them, a young woman named Leah, looked uncertain. "Are we sure, sir? The Apex units haven't been released in over a century. Last time, it wasn't easy to control them." Mason nodded. "I know. But this time, the enemy isn't like before. This time, it's either we win fast, or the entire Galactic Union burns." The room fell silent as Mason pressed his palm against the activation console. A small green light blinked, and deep beneath the ship, hidden vaults began to unlock. Hydraulic systems hissed as heavy steel doors opened one after another. Out came the Apex unit's genetically enhanced human warriors, built during Earth's darkest wars. Now awakened for the galaxy's greatest one. They weren't robots. They weren't clones. They were real humans born, trained, and reshaped. By pain, fire, and combat, each one carried memories of battles long gone and enemies long dead. But they were loyal to Earth, and Earth had just given them a target meanwhile. On a peaceful planet named Tratha, the Dargans had started enslaving the local Virian population. The Virian were small, fox-like beings, known for their technology and peaceful nature. Their capital city, once shining with towers and gardens, now burned with black smoke. Families hid in broken buildings, children cried in silence, afraid. To attract attention, one of the Dargan commanders laughed as he kicked over a family's food crate. "Weaklings," he hissed, "you were not made to rule. You were made to kneel." The ground began to rumble. First, they thought it was another storm. But then the sky split open, and ships in sharp, spear-like shapes broke through the clouds. They didn't come gently, they fell with force. Landing like thunder across the fields outside the city, the Dargans aimed their weapons, shouting orders, "Take positions, stop them before they reach the city." But the Apex units were already there. A flash of motion, one Apex warrior charged through the front line. With a blade twice the size of his arm, another dropped from above, slamming into a Dargan tank and ripping its hatch open with bare hands. There was no sound of shouting, only precision, only power. The Virian, hiding in the rubble, watched with wide eyes as the Dargans fell back for the first time. One child whispered to his mother, "Who are they?" The mother answered, her voice shaking, "Humans, but not like the others." Back on Spearhead, Mason stood before a communication screen, now showing live feeds from 4 different battlefields. The Apex units weren't just winning, they were breaking the Dargan lines apart. Not because of numbers, not because of stronger ships, but because every Apex warrior fought like a storm. Wrapped in skin. Each one carried decades of combat experience. Some were older than the Virian civilization itself, and none of them were afraid to die. Leah walked up beside Mason, watching the feeds in silence. "We trained them to end wars," Mason said softly, "but the galaxy wasn't ready for them." "Maybe it still isn't." Leah looked at him. "What happens after this?" He paused. "We put them back to sleep. They don't belong in peacetime." Across the stars, stories began to spread. The Tural miners in the asteroid colonies heard of human warriors who fought with fire in their eyes. The scholars of Uther recorded footage of Apex units standing over fallen Dargan commanders. The Virians sent out signals of thanks, calling the humans their protectors. But among the Dargan High Command, there was fear for the first time. Inside the cold halls of the Dargan battle station, Supreme Warlord Kern watched the reports in silence. One of his advisors trembled beside him. "They are not like the others. They are humans, but different." Kern slammed his metal hand on the table. "They are monsters." "No," came a voice from the shadows. It was a captured human. Diplomat, bruised but still defiant. "They are what you made us become. You forced us to answer your war with something you can't control." Kern turned to him, face twisted in rage. "You could have surrendered. You could have fled." The human's lip bled. But he smiled. "We don't run. Not when someone calls for help." On the ground, the Apex units pushed forward, now targeting supply chains and communication hubs. One of the squad leaders, named Drew, stood atop a smoking ridge, scanning the valley ahead. His voice came through the comm. "Mission Control, this is Apex 6. We've cleared Zone 9. No resistance left," a voice replied. "Copy that." Apex 6, proceed to final objective. Eliminate Dargan Command. As Drew moved forward, he passed a group of freed Virian. One of them stepped forward shyly, handing him a glowing crystal, a symbol of gratitude. Drew looked at it, then gently placed it in a pouch on his chest. He said nothing, but gave a nod. The Virian bowed deeply. Humanity hadn't just sent soldiers. They had sent a message. If the galaxy called for help, Earth would answer, not with speeches, but with strength. And when evil rose to crush the weak, it would meet something worse in return. Apex was here, and Apex never lost the battle for Velarii. Prime was only the beginning. The Grallox Queen was dead, and her hives were collapsing. But the war had spread beyond one planet. Other systems sent messages, crying for help as the Grallox moved in like a dark tide. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was rising with it from the command deck of the Fenrir. Major Reed stared at the star maps. Red dots marked new hive locations, one after another. Planets were turning into battlefields. Reed, the Velarii. Report increased hive activity on the southern continent, said Lieutenant Mara, the ship's tactical officer. Her eyes flicked between data streams. If we don't act soon, they'll lose their entire world. Reed nodded. Prepare teams. We move out in 1 hour, sir. The Galactic Council sent a fleet to help, Mara added. But they want to negotiate. They say the Grallox might be reasoned with. Reed smiled grimly. The Grallox don't negotiate. They destroy. In the forest of Velarii Prime, the human teams were already on the move. Panther Squad set new traps. Falcon Squad patrolled the skies. And Cerberus Unit cleared out remaining nests. Reed led Shadow Team deep into a cave system rumored to house a new queen. The tunnels were tighter and darker than before. The air smelled of damp stone and old decay. This place feels wrong, whispered Yana, Reed's second in command. Reed nodded. Stay sharp. The queen won't make this easy. They moved silently, weapons ready, every sense alert. The cave echoed with strange sounds, the clicks and growls of hidden beasts. But the humans pressed forward. Elsewhere, in a neighboring system, the news was worse. A peaceful world named Aurea was under attack by Grallox. The local forces were overwhelmed. Refugees streamed towards spaceports, desperate for safety. When Earth received the distress call, they did not hesitate. The Spearhead launched new squads of Project Warden units, human warriors bred and trained like apex predators. They carried the names of Earth's greatest hunters: Wolf, Panther, Falcon, and Cerberus. Commander Drew led Falcon Squad into Aurea's skies. The ground beneath them burned as Grallox forces advanced. Stay low and fast, Drew ordered. We hit their supply lines first, cut off their support. The squad moved like a storm, dropping silent bombs and firing precision shots. The Grallox were strong, but disorganized without their queens. Back on Velarii Prime, Reed's Shadow Team found the queens laired deep in the caverns. The queen was larger than any before, her armor shining like dark crystals. She hissed a warning, but the humans did not hesitate. Yana moved in with a blade designed to pierce even the toughest shells. Bren set charges around them. Chambers. Roots Reed prepared for the final strike. The battle was fierce. The queen fought with savage power, but the humans fought with strategy and teamwork. Slowly, they wore her down. Finally, Reed drove his blade into the queen's glowing heart. She let out a deafening roar before collapsing. The hive trembled and began to fall. As the queen died, the Velarii scientists released new data. The Grallox hive mind was more complex than anyone imagined. Destroying the queens caused chaos, but it also forced the Grallox to evolve. New threats emerged, smaller, faster, and smarter Grallox started appearing. They hunted in packs like wolves. They used traps and ambushes. They learned from the humans. Reed gathered his teams. This isn't over. We fight smarter now. We adapt. The Grallox will not outlast us. His words echoed in every soldier's mind. They knew the war had entered a new phase. At the Galactic Council, tensions rose. Some leaders feared humanity's growing power. They whispered that Earth's hunters might become too strong, that humans would no longer be protectors but conquerors. But Velarii Ambassador Telly stood firm. Humanity answered our call when others would not. She said, their warriors are fierce, but they fight for balance. They do not seek conquest. The galaxy needs them. Her voice carried weight. The council agreed to support the war effort, but with caution. Meanwhile, across the stars, humans and their allies launched strikes on every Grallox nest they could find. Wolf Squad hunted through frozen tundras. Panther Squad struck in dense jungles. Falcon Squad ruled the skies. Cerberus unit broke through fortified hives. Each battle was a test, each victory cost lives. But humanity's hunters never stopped. Reed's voice came through the comms during a critical strike. Remember who we are. We are the apex. We are the balance. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. In quiet moments, the humans thought about Earth, died about the wolves that hunted in packs, the hawks that soared high, and the lions that ruled the plains. Their instincts were ancient. Their spirits were fierce. That was why they fought, not just for victory, but for survival, for honor, for the galaxy that called for help. The war beyond Velari Prime had only just begun, and humanity stood ready as hunters, as protectors, as apex predators. The war had dragged on for months. Velari Prime was scarred, but alive. Other planets had seen destruction and rebirth in the same breath. The Growlocks had evolved, adapting their attacks and fighting with new tactics. But the humanity's apex predators had never stopped. Major Reed stood on a ridge overlooking the last known Growlock's hive on Velari Prime. The sun rose slowly, casting long shadows over the broken forest. His armor was worn, but his eyes burned with determination. Behind him, his team prepared their weapons and scanned the area. Today, we end this, Reed said quietly, for Velari Prime, for the galaxy, for Earth. Team Wolf moved first. They slipped through the trees, silent as wolves stalking prey. Each member watched the shadows, listening for any sign of movement. Their mission was clear: eliminate the final queen and destroy the hive before it could spread again. Suddenly, Yenna signaled movement ahead. Growlock's scouts crept between the trees. Wolf team split, surrounding them. Before the creatures could react, the hunters struck. Blades and darts found their marks, and the scouts fell without sound. Clear, Yenna whispered. The team advanced deeper into the forest. At the same time, Falcon Squad flew high above in their quiet ships. They scanned for signs of the queens. Energy, Mira, the squad leader, spotted a glowing pulse near a rocky cliff. Possible queen nest, she said. Moving in, they descended swiftly, landing near the cliff base. Falcon Squad moved with precision, setting sensors and traps to alert Team Wolf of any enemy movement. Hold position and cover Wolf, Mira instructed. Meanwhile, Panther Squad approached from the opposite side, moving through thick underbrush. Their leader, Dax, planted charges to block any Growlock's reinforcements from reaching the hive. The teams worked like a web, each part connected, protecting the other. Deep inside the hive, the queen waited. Her armor was thick and her claws sharp. She sensed the humans closing in. She sent out orders in her mind, trying to rally her forces. But the humans had learned her language. They knew her tactics. They were no longer just soldiers. They were hunters. Breed's team entered the hive quietly, moving through tunnels lined with glowing eggs and strange roots. The air was thick with the smell of decay and power. Suddenly, the queen appeared. She towered over them, her eyes burning with rage. She roared, shaking the walls, sending vibrations through the ground. Reed raised his blade. Now, the battle was fierce. The queen struck with claws and tail. Hunters dodged, struck, and moved as one. Yenna cut through her armor plates. Brent set charges at her legs. Mira's voice crackled through the comm. Wolf team, the queen is weakening. Hold your ground. With one final strike, Reed drove his blade into the queen's chest. She screamed, a sound that shook the entire hive. Then she fell. Outside, the hive began to collapse. Falcon Squad and Panther Squad triggered their charges. Explosions tore through the tunnels. Dust and smoke filled the air. The remaining Growlocks fled in chaos. Reed and his team raced out, jumping over fallen beams and dodging debris. They reached the surface just as the hive exploded behind them. The forest was silent again. Velari Prime's last threat was gone. Telly stood with the Velari Council, watching the humans return. They came as hunters, she said softly, but they stayed as protectors. One council member smiled. The galaxy owes them more than thanks. We owe them our trust. Back on the Fenrir, Reed looked at the stars. The war was over. for now. But somewhere in the vast galaxy, new threats would rise. And humanity's apex predators would be ready, because when predators protect, the galaxy survives.